This is my story, how I was almost scammed on a dating app. Hey, welcome back. So this is a little different episode for me. This one we're going to talk about basically my experience on how I was almost scammed on a dating app. This is in response to a recent episode of the How to Money podcast with Matt and Joel. Great podcast. I listen to it all the time. And the recent episode 485, talked about all these different types of scams and how they're scamming, younger people, different types of scams, different things that you can do to avoid being scammed. And one of the things they talked about was romance scams and how romance scams were up in the year 2021. And it just reminded me of the time that I was almost scammed and wanted to share my story. It was pretty embarrassing, and I felt ashamed when it happened. But I guess this is just to help others out there. If you are single, it can happen to anybody. And I'll walk through kind of my experience on Hinge. So this particular instance was on the Hinge dating app. You probably heard of them. They have commercials everywhere. This is the app that was meant to be deleted. And typically how it works, if I meet with somebody, if I match with somebody, we chat within the app, for several days, a week or two, just seeing if there's a connection. If there is, then I ask the woman if they're comfortable exchanging numbers. Then we'll, progress to actually messaging, outside of the app. And then, if, again, I feel as though there's a connection just in small talk and getting to know somebody, then I will ask if they would want to meet for coffee or something like that in real life. And, how this particular match happened, we matched on the app, and she was in her mid-30s. She had a toddler, about 3 or 4, can't quite remember, a daughter. And chatting within the app, getting to know each other, we hit it off. I mean, it was a typical getting to know each other conversation, right? What led you to using the app? What's your favorite type of food? Where do you like to go on vacation? What do you do when you're not working? She was a hairstylist. It seemed legit, everything up until now, right? So, texting within the app seemed innocent enough. And after a couple weeks, I asked if she was comfortable exchanging numbers. She was, and provided me her number. And then we started texting or messaging outside of the app. And this is where, we could now be a little more free with sharing photos and that type of thing. And, it was innocent enough. I would, receive photos of her, snuggling with her daughter, watching a Disney movie, or making mac and cheese for her daughter. It was, she would text me, hey, what did you have for lunch today? And she would text me her, eating a salad or whatever. And it was, again, seemed everything on the up and up. And then, after a couple weeks, I had suggested, hey, why don't we meet for coffee or lunch or something? And she agreed. She's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this match was a little beyond my typical distance geographically. So how some of the apps work, I have 40 miles or 35 miles within where I live. But then sometimes the app will say, hey, if this isn't a deal breaker, if there's no matches, we're going to extend that radius a bit to see if we can find others. And so this match was a little bit beyond that, right? So it was just over an hour away. So, I said, well, hey, we could always just meet, halfway, and she was cool with that. And so after a while, I had said, hey, here's a cafe. There's a cafe like about halfway between us. Let's go ahead and meet for coffee or something. And she goes, well, you know what? Let's do lunch on Saturday, right? So we basically planned to meet for lunch, and we were gonna firm up the time and like when we had to leave by, kind of the Friday before, and I hadn't heard from her, and then that Saturday I hadn't heard, and I texted, hey, good morning, just checking in, are we still on for today? You know, when are we going to be meeting, that type of thing. And it was interesting because I didn't hear anything back, and then now time was kind of getting away from us, right? So now time had kind of passed, late morning to where if we're going to meet for lunch, because again it was a little bit further away. And then I received a message saying that, oh, I'm sorry, my car's in the shop, she said, which is interesting. And I was like, kind of concerned. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, did something happen? She goes, no, I brought it to the shop to get my brakes done. And so immediately I started thinking to myself, well, you brought it in to get your brakes done like on a Saturday morning and the day we were going to meet for lunch? Kind of weird timing there. And then I said, well, so if today doesn't work, but then she started texting saying, hey, well, it's actually in the shop, and she can't get her car out of the shop because she doesn't have any money to pay the mechanic. And immediately I kind of understood what was going on. And again, heart sunk. I knew that I was being taken advantage of, and I was in the middle of a scam, right? Now thinking back, there had been several occasions where over the last, couple weeks, that she had mentioned that her phone was acting up, or she really needed a new phone, or whatever the case was. And now I started thinking maybe other guys she had been scamming would have offered to get her a new phone or something. I don't know. It was really an interesting situation to be in. And so immediately when I said that, I kind of called her out on it. And that was the last message I heard from her. When I went back into the app, her match was there. It was grayed out because we hadn't chatted within the app, but immediately her profile was gone now, right? She had unmatched from me. And then I did pay a service, so I paid like the $5 or whatever to do a reverse phone lookup service. That phone number that I was texting, again, it was green bubbles, so I knew it wasn't an iPhone. I guess it could have been because when I did the reverse lookup, it was a Google Voice number. So yeah, I was upset. I was sad. I was mad, and it can happen to anybody. Now, granted, I didn't send any money, right? It stopped right there. Now, the interesting thing too is that a very similar interaction happened with a different woman on the same app a few months later, and after a week or so of just messaging within the app, again, standard getting to know somebody type of discussions, I just brought up the fact that this had happened to me in the past, and boom, her profile was gone, right? So yeah, it's I know that there's in the news, the Tinder swindler is out there in the news. A lot of guys are out there, and there's a lot of douchebag pricks out there that do target women. But I just want to let people know too that sometimes women are dinks and they'll do it as well. So, and the whole Google Voice thing, in women's defense, totally understand that because of the idiots out there, some women, they have to do that. They got to give somebody their Google Voice number. They wouldn't give them their real phone number, at least at first, right? Because you just don't know. There's creeps out there, and it sucks. So on behalf of the good guys out there, I apologize for the creeps. But anyway, thanks everyone for letting me share my story of how I was almost caught in a romance scam. I really appreciate everyone following along. Again, like and subscribe down below. We'll see you next time on Heavy Metal Money.